Karma doesn't knock. It picks the lock, walks right in, and makes itself at home. You ever notice how the people who betrayed you always look unbothered, until suddenly they start posting mysterious healing quotes and disappearing from social media? Yeah, that's not healing. That's heat. Because right now, your ex, the same one who lied, manipulated, and treated your loyalty like a clearance sale, is under serious investigation. And no, this isn't rumor mill drama. This is divine paperwork catching up. Here's the funny part. The same person who thought they were 10 steps ahead of everyone now can't even get 3 hours of sleep without checking who's watching their story. Life has a dark sense of humor, doesn't it? The universe doesn't chase, it audits. And when it doesn't care about crocodile tears or fake apologies. It reviews receipts. Every word, every betrayal, every oops my bad moment gets time-stamped in karma's eternal database. Psychologists say betrayal rewires the brain like trauma. It distorts your sense of reality, forcing you to rebuild who you are from scratch. But here's the twist. That same rewiring that nearly broke you also upgraded your intuition. You didn't just heal, you became a living lie detector. And now the very truth they ran from is the one investigating them in plain sight. Stay tuned, because this isn't just about revenge, it's about revelation. The same tables they flipped on you, God's using them as evidence now. So grab your popcorn and maybe a tiny halo, because this time the universe isn't silent, it's subpoenaed. Number 1, their empire of lies is unraveling, and you already saw the first loose thread. They thought they were clever, weaving lies like silk, manipulating every situation so perfectly that even the people closest to you began to doubt your truth. They laughed while twisting stories, confident that no one would ever connect the dots. But the same web they spun so carefully is now tightening around them. You saw the first loose thread long before anyone else did. That subtle shift in tone, that sudden defensiveness, the way they couldn't keep their own stories straight. You knew something was off, and now that intuition is being confirmed in real time. What's unfolding now isn't coincidence, it's exposure. Every deceitful act leaves residue, a digital footprint, a message, a transaction, a witness who remembers. They built their comfort zone on manipulation, assuming everyone was too distracted or too afraid to notice. But truth has a rhythm of its own. It moves quietly at first, then hits like thunder when it arrives. The investigation that's closing in on them isn't random karma floating in the air. It's the consequence of choices made with arrogance and cruelty. The same charm they once used to cover their deceit is now being re-examined as evidence of manipulation. What makes this powerful is that the truth isn't coming from your mouth anymore. It's coming from the systems and people they once thought they could outsmart. You don't need to expose them. Their own actions are doing that now. And the irony, they'll try to act shocked when confronted, as if betrayal is something that just happened. But deep down, they know they built this outcome one lie at a time. You stood there for so long defending yourself, trying to explain, trying to be understood. Now, all you have to do is watch as the world catches up to the reality you lived through. It's not about revenge, it's validation without your participation. The silence that follows a liar's exposure is heavy, not because of guilt, but because there's nothing left to manipulate. Every secret they hid, every truth they distorted, every person they used to smear your name, it's all being traced, logged, and replayed. They thought they had control. What they didn't realize is that the truth doesn't expire. It just waits for the perfect time to make its entrance. And now, that time has come. Number 2, this isn't cosmic revenge. It's accountability catching up to a predictable system. People love to call it karma, as if it's some mystical force floating through the clouds handing out cosmic payback. But what's happening here isn't magic, it's consequence. It's the natural collapse that follows when someone lives on manipulation, deceit, and ego for too long. The universe doesn't need to punish them. Their own actions have already planted every seed of their downfall. Now those seeds are sprouting, and accountability is arriving in human form, through systems, through exposure, through evidence that can't be denied. The reason this moment feels powerful is because it strips away illusion. When someone betrays you, they often hide behind charm, credibility, or influence. They rely on others not to question them. But investigations don't care about personality, they care about patterns. They analyze timelines, messages, contradictions, and behavior. That's what's happening now. It's not revenge from heaven. It's human order catching up with spiritual truth. The very logic they use to manipulate others is being used to dismantle their own narrative. This kind of reckoning hits differently because it's not loud or dramatic. It's systematic. It happens through audits, testimonies, and undeniable proof. What once made them powerful, their ability to lie with confidence, now becomes their weakness. The more they try to defend themselves, the deeper the inconsistencies become. The mask that once impressed everyone now looks ridiculous under real scrutiny. And you don't need to celebrate their downfall. It's unfolding naturally. Their arrogance was always a time bomb. Now it's detonating in public view. What you're witnessing is not some poetic miracle. It's justice in motion. It's what happens when reality refuses to bend anymore. There's something quietly satisfying about watching truth reclaim its place after being buried under manipulation for so long. They wanted control so badly that they forgot control doesn't mean immunity. Every lie has a lifespan, and theirs just expired. So when you see them facing questions, losing support, and scrambling for excuses, understand that this isn't fate being cruel. It's the balance of cause and effect asserting itself. It's the simple, undeniable truth that no one, no matter how persuasive, powerful, or deceptive, can outsmart accountability forever. Number 3, your survival is the exhibit everyone will cite when the truth is written down. Your survival is the evidence they never expected to exist. They thought breaking you would erase the proof of what they'd done, but every time you stood back up, you became a living contradiction to their lies. The same strength they tried to twist into stubbornness or drama is now being recognized as resilience under pressure. When investigators or people finally piece together the story, they're not just looking at what your ex did. They're looking at how you responded, how you endured, and how you never mirrored their cruelty. That's what separates a victim from a witness. You didn't just survive it, you became the document of truth itself. For years, they controlled the narrative, feeding others versions of events that made them look like the victim. They weaponized charm, guilt, and half-truths because they thought silence equals innocence. But silence doesn't protect a liar. It preserves the timeline until truth can speak through results. And now, your life, the one they tried to destroy, is testifying louder than any words. The stability you've rebuilt, the composure you carry, the peace you've earned, all of it becomes undeniable proof that their version of you was fiction. When truth finally becomes public, people are often shocked, not just by what the abuser did, but by how you managed to keep your integrity intact through all of it. You didn't fight fire with fire. You outlasted the flames. That kind of strength exposes deception without you needing to say much. You've become the reference point, the person others now look to for clarity. That's how divine justice operates. It restores credibility to the one who was ridiculed and strips power from the one who abused it. And the most painful irony for your ex is this. They built their confidence on your silence, never realizing your patience was building their exposure. Every message, every lie, every manipulation that once made you question yourself has now formed the pattern others can finally see. You are the living proof that truth doesn't need a spotlight, it just needs time. So as their lies crumble under evidence, your name rises naturally, not through revenge, but through vindication. You didn't just survive what they did, you became the undeniable record of why they're being exposed now. Number 4, the closest allies of the abuser will fracture first because self-preservation beats loyalty. This is the stage where the mask truly starts to fall. When the investigation heat rises, the people who once swore they would ride or die with your ex begin to quietly unbuckle their seatbelts. They start pulling away, not out of guilt or moral awakening, but because they can smell risk. Loyalty always sounds noble until self-preservation enters the room. Suddenly, those who laughed at your pain start deleting old messages, distancing themselves, and rewriting history to protect their own image. The same ones who once called you crazy are now pretending they never said a word. You'll notice how subtle it begins, a slow fading act. They'll unfollow accidentally, forget to tag your ex, stop showing up for events, and start posting vague statements about boundaries or energy. That's the language of self-preservation, disguised as self-awareness. They know the walls are closing in, and they don't want to get crushed in the collapse. When people sense a fall from grace, they don't try to save the person falling. They just make sure they're standing far enough away not to get hit by the debris. For a manipulator, this kind of desertion is devastating. Their power depended on their audience, the friends who defended them, the enablers who repeated their lies, the quiet observers who looked away. Once those people start pulling back, the manipulator's whole illusion begins to rot. They realize that what they thought was loyalty was only convenience. The crowd was never clapping for their integrity. They were clapping because it was safe to. Now that it's not, the applause stops mid-sound. And the irony. Your ex will start blaming those same allies for betraying them, never seeing the mirror moment, that this is exactly what they did to you. The same cycle of abandonment they created for others is now circling back to them. Everyone's survival instinct has kicked in, and suddenly, your ex's arrogance becomes radioactive. The more they try to defend themselves, the more isolated they look. It's poetic in a brutal way. The same support system they used to shield their lies is now turning into witnesses of their truth. Loyalty ends where exposure begins, and in the end, they'll learn that people don't stay loyal to liars. They stay loyal to whatever keeps them safe. Number 5, they'll try to shift the narrative by weaponizing sympathy. Treat it as a red flag, not a truth. When the walls start closing in, manipulation doesn't stop. It just changes costume. Your ex will start swapping arrogance for fragility, suddenly playing the victim they once mocked you for being. They'll use sadness like a strategy, turning crocodile tears into a public performance meant to soften judgment. You'll hear things like, "I made mistakes, but I'm human," or "People don't know the full story," delivered with just enough emotion to make others hesitate. This isn't healing, it's narrative control. They're not seeking forgiveness, they're seeking leverage. This stage is dangerous because sympathy blurs logic. The moment people start feeling sorry for them, they stop looking at evidence. It's psychological sleight of hand, shifting the spotlight from their actions to their feelings. They want to be seen as the misunderstood soul who lost their way, not the architect of deliberate harm. It's manipulation repackaged in empathy, and it works on anyone who confuses emotion with truth. They'll post vague quotes about growth or mental health, sprinkle in stories about their tough childhood, and suddenly the conversation moves away from accountability to compassion. But here's where you must stay clear-minded. Genuine remorse doesn't seek an audience. Real accountability happens quietly, away from performance. What they're doing now is image management, not healing. When someone is truly sorry, they make restitution. They tell the truth without excuses, and they sit with the discomfort. Your ex will do the opposite. They'll cry publicly but manipulate privately, claim they've changed while blaming others for why they changed in the first place. It's all choreography. Every word, every tear, every reflective post, designed to buy them time and sympathy. Don't let pity silence truth. Pity can be blinding. It makes people lower their defenses and forget the damage that was done. That's why you must remain grounded in facts, in the texts, the patterns, the timeline, the proof. Emotional noise fades, evidence doesn't. Let others drown in their dramatics if they must. But you stay steady. When emotions get weaponized, neutrality becomes your shield. In the end, their performance will collapse under its own contradictions, and when it does, everyone will finally see what you always knew, that their tears were never about remorse, only about losing control of the story. Number 6, there's freedom in watching them panic. Your trauma transforms into their complication. There's a strange, quiet freedom in watching someone who once seemed untouchable start to crumble under the same chaos they created. For so long, you carried the weight of what they did. The sleepless nights, the confusion, the emotional scars that no one could see. They walked around like nothing happened, while you were left cleaning up the wreckage they caused. But life has an unshakable balance, and when it finally tilts, it doesn't ask for permission. The very manipulation that once gave them control has now become their complication. Every scheme, every secret, every lie is now coming back in ways they can't manage or hide. It's not that you take joy in their panic. It's that you finally get to breathe, knowing the energy has shifted. They're the ones now explaining themselves, defending their choices and scrambling for stability. You spent years living in survival mode, constantly reacting to their cruelty. Now it's their turn to react to the consequences of it. That's not revenge, that's redistribution. The same weight they dumped on you has found its rightful owner. Their days, once filled with manipulation and performance, are now consumed with damage control. Calls they used to ignore are now the ones they dread. The people they used to charm are now the ones asking hard questions. Reputation, that shiny illusion they built, is starting to crack under the light of scrutiny. And the irony? Every time they try to explain themselves, they sound more guilty. Their charisma doesn't translate anymore. Their excuses don't land. The very tools they once used to dominate now make them look desperate. That's where your freedom lives, in knowing you no longer have to fix or prove anything. Their panic is proof enough. The tables haven't just turned, they've rotated back to their natural order. You no longer carry what isn't yours. Watching them deal with consequences doesn't erase what they did to you, but it restores a certain balance in your spirit. You're no longer trapped in their story, they're trapped in the fallout of their own. Their chaos is now their teacher, their lies their punishment, and your peace. That's the victory they'll never be able to counterfeit again. Number 7. Some people will misread this as winning. Truth is messier and less performative than victory. When justice finally starts to unfold, people love to turn it into a spectacle. They'll call it your win, as if healing is a competition. They'll expect you to celebrate, to post something triumphant, to wear vindication like a trophy. But the truth is far less glamorous. Real justice isn't always satisfying. It's often slow, complicated, and bittersweet. When your ex faces exposure, it doesn't magically erase the pain you went through. It just proves that what you felt all along was real. That's not a victory parade, that's validation, and it carries a different kind of weight. Truth doesn't need to trend. It doesn't need a caption or a dance. It just needs to be recognized and respected. You don't owe anyone a performance of moving on. You've already done the hardest part, surviving when no one believed you. This isn't about showing the world you've won. It's about quietly reclaiming your peace. While others gossip, debate, or celebrate, your real work is rebuilding yourself piece by piece. Your confidence, your trust, your sense of safety. That's the kind of win that doesn't make headlines, but it lasts longer than any moment of public applause. People who never lived your experience will misunderstand this stage. They'll think closure means joy, not realizing closure can feel like exhaustion wrapped in relief. When you've fought to be heard for so long, even justice can feel heavy. That's because truth doesn't just expose the liar. It also forces you to revisit the story you've tried to heal from. So while others are shouting, "Karma got them," you'll probably just be sitting in quiet reflection, realizing how much energy you spent surviving something that should have never happened. The point isn't to win louder, it's to live freer. You don't need to prove that you're over it or that you've forgiven. That's performative healing, and it's draining. Save your energy for yourself, for the things that remind you that peace is possible again. Let others have their drama, their gossip, their opinions. You've earned the right to live without explaining, without performing, without turning your healing into entertainment. Real victory doesn't need noise. It's silent, solid, and deeply personal. The kind that doesn't seek validation because it already is the validation. Number 8. Public exposure will reveal the mundane cruelty that made the betrayal possible. The shocking part of exposure is never the grand revelation. It's the details. The world loves dramatic scandals, but the truth of betrayal lives in the small, ordinary acts that most people overlook. It's not always the big lies that destroy you. It's the tiny ones that chip away at your sanity day after day. The missed call that was no big deal. The story that kept changing slightly each time, the quiet smirk when you started to doubt yourself. Those were the building blocks of their deceit. And now, as the investigation unfolds, all those details they dismissed as misunderstandings are resurfacing as evidence. This is what makes exposure so powerful. It turns the mundane into meaning. The very things that made you feel paranoid or overly sensitive are now being documented, analyzed, and validated. The text they deleted, the transaction they forgot to mention, the inconsistency in their timeline, all of it is finally being pieced together to form the full picture. What once felt like random confusion now looks like a pattern of calculated manipulation. The dots you were never allowed to connect are now connecting themselves. People will start to realize that the cruelty wasn't always loud or violent. It was subtle, disguised as forgetfulness, charm, or carelessness. That's what makes it so dangerous. It hides behind normalcy. The same behaviors that made you question your worth are now being understood for what they were: psychological control. And when others see how precise that control was, they'll also see how much strength it took for you to survive it. The evidence doesn't just expose what they did, it highlights what you endured. And that's where the real revelation lies. Public exposure has a strange way of turning the invisible visible. The world begins to notice what you saw all along, and that awareness rewrites your story. You're no longer the overreacting one or the emotional one. You're the one who was right. Every small dismissal becomes proof of your clarity. Every manipulation becomes documentation. And in that shift, the weight you carried alone for so long finally transfers back to where it belongs, on the one who caused it. That's not revenge, that's restoration. The truth is now in plain sight, and the little things that almost broke you have become the very things that expose them. Number 9, their apology tour will be transactional. Treat it like a business maneuver, not a confession. When they finally say sorry, don't rush to believe it. Real remorse doesn't arrive with perfect timing, media angles, or rehearsed humility. It arrives through consistent change. What your ex will likely offer is not an apology, but a transaction. They're not seeking forgiveness, they're seeking leverage. Their apology will appear right after exposure, not before. It will come when they start losing credibility, when they need sympathy, or when they realize silence is no longer working. That's not guilt. That's damage control. Watch their timing closely. True regret moves in private, long before the spotlight ever hits. But staged remorse waits until there's something to gain or something to lose. The same person who dismissed your pain when it mattered most will now start performing empathy because it's convenient. They'll frame their apology as growth, subtly slipping in phrases like, "We both made mistakes," or "I wasn't in the best place back then." Those aren't apologies, they're negotiations. They dilute accountability so they can keep their image intact while pretending to take responsibility. You owe it to yourself to dissect every word and action. Who benefits from this apology? Does it bring you closure, or does it clean their reputation? Is it rooted in truth or in fear of consequences? Because the truth is, people who are truly sorry don't have to announce it. They just change. They make amends quietly. They admit the full scope of their actions, and they accept whatever outcome comes next. There's no PR spin, no emotional blackmail, no attempt to reframe history. They face the truth without needing applause for it. That's why your standard for sorry must stay high. You've seen how easily words can be twisted, how apologies can become tools of manipulation. Empty words are emotional counterfeit. They look real until you check the value. Don't accept regret that only exists under pressure. Don't mistake emotional theatrics for healing. Let their actions over time prove whether remorse actually exists. Because at the end of the day, a true apology doesn't come to save them. It comes to free you. Anything else is just another strategy, another mask, another way to rewrite the story in their favor. And this time, you're too aware to let that happen again. Number 10, your reputation rises not because they fall, but because you refuse to be defined by their deceit. The most powerful revenge you'll ever have is not their downfall, it's your restoration. You don't rise because they're exposed, you rise because you no longer live under the shadow they tried to cast over you. Your ex thought their betrayal would stain you permanently, that their lies would shape how people saw you. But reputation built on deceit always collapses, and when it does, truth reclaims its ground. You're not rebuilding to prove them wrong. You're rebuilding to prove yourself right, that your worth, your integrity, your spirit were never theirs to define. The investigation may clear your name on paper, but your daily life will clear it in reality. Every calm decision, every boundary you enforce, every act of kindness that isn't performative, all of it becomes living evidence that you were never who they said you were. The world begins to see the difference between your steadiness and their chaos. You become the reference point of grace under fire, proof that you can be broken, betrayed, and still choose dignity over destruction. That's what real power looks like: quiet, deliberate, and consistent. The abuser's story relied on distortion. They needed you to react, to defend yourself, to break character so they could say, "See, I told you." By refusing to live in reaction, you took the script out of their hands. Now you're writing your own version, one that doesn't waste breath trying to convince people. It simply demonstrates. Time does what explanation can't. The more you focus on living, creating, and thriving, the more irrelevant their version of you becomes. People eventually stop asking what happened and start noticing what's happening now. Your name begins to carry a new weight, not because you shouted your truth louder, but because you lived it better. The contrast between your growth and their decline will speak for itself. And the best part, you won't even need to reference them anymore. Their existence fades naturally when you outgrow the story they trapped you in. That's how you win, not by proving a point, but by becoming the point. You are the evidence that character outlasts chaos, and that no betrayal, no rumor, and no investigation can bury what's already been reborn in truth. Number 11, expect surprising allies. Strangers who recognize the blueprint of abuse will step forward. When the mask slips and patterns begin to repeat, something fascinating happens. Strangers start connecting dots that others ignored. Abuse always follows a formula, and once people recognize the blueprint, they can't unsee it. What felt like your lonely battle starts to look like part of a larger design. You'll notice people you barely spoke to stepping forward, not out of pity, but out of recognition. They've seen this script before, the manipulation, the charm, the subtle cruelty disguised as care. And now that it's out in the open, they want to add their truth to the record. These aren't random sympathizers. They're witnesses who understand the rhythm of deceit. An old co-worker who once doubted you suddenly remembers how they were gaslit too. A former friend of the abuser finally feels safe enough to admit they saw the same tactics play out. Even people you never met might reach out saying, "I went through the same thing with them." That's when isolation cracks, because truth never lives alone for long. It just waits for alignment, for courage to synchronize across different lives. What makes these allies powerful is their detachment. They owe you nothing, yet they speak anyway. That kind of testimony carries weight because it's not emotional. It's factual, observed, and uncoached. Each voice that steps forward strengthens your credibility and weakens the illusion the abuser built. Suddenly, what once looked like your side of the story becomes a documented pattern. The myth of the misunderstood victimizer collapses under the weight of repetition. And here's the deeper revelation. Exposure doesn't just clear your name, it empowers others to act. Every person who speaks out because of your courage extends the chain of accountability further. You become the pivot that turned private pain into public awareness. It's not about revenge or vindication. It's about correction, setting the record straight so this blueprint can't be recycled again. So when those unexpected allies appear, recognize it for what it is, divine timing in human form. Truth recruits its own defense team when it's ready. You started as the only witness to what happened, but now you're surrounded by a collective memory that refuses to let lies stand alone. That's how the narrative finally shifts, not through noise, but through alignment. Number 12, this will force you to redefine justice. It's legal, communal, and deeply personal all at once. True justice rarely looks like the movies. It's not a dramatic gavel strike or a tearful confession under fluorescent lights. It's slower, quieter, and far more layered. When someone betrays you deeply, especially someone you once loved, the damage doesn't just exist in one space. It spreads through your name, your connections, your sense of safety. That's why justice can't be confined to what happens legally. It has to include what happens to you personally and socially. It's about how the world slowly starts returning what was taken from you, piece by piece. When the truth finally begins surfacing, you'll see it take shape in different ways. A friend who once distanced themselves suddenly calls to apologize. A colleague who doubted you quietly restores your credibility in rooms you no longer enter. Even opportunities that seemed permanently closed begin to reopen. None of this happens overnight, but each restoration is a kind of verdict, small, personal rulings in your favor from the universe itself. These are not coincidences. They are reparations delivered through human hands. The legal system may eventually hold them accountable, and that matters. But that's just one layer. The deeper form of justice is in your internal stability returning, when your peace no longer flinches at their name, when you can finally sleep without replaying the story in your head, when you realize their chaos no longer has authority over your emotions. That's not forgiveness, that's emancipation. That's what healing looks like when it's not waiting for an apology or a headline. The most profound justice comes when your life itself contradicts the lies that were told about you. Every success, every calm morning, every genuine connection is a counter-argument stronger than any statement they could make. You're not seeking revenge, you're rebuilding truth into your existence. So yes, let the legal process unfold. Let karma handle its end of the bargain. But never underestimate the quiet power of reclaiming yourself. Because at the end of it all, the most undeniable form of justice is when you no longer need the world to validate what you already know, that you survived what was meant to break you, and your restoration itself became the verdict. Number 13, do not outsource your peace to the pace of the investigation. Reclaim rituals that ground you now. One of the hardest lessons in situations like this is realizing that justice moves slower than healing. Investigations are unpredictable. They pause, shift directions, and sometimes drag on for months without visible progress. If you tie your peace to that timeline, you'll keep reliving the uncertainty every single day. The truth is, the system isn't built for emotional recovery. It's built for facts, paperwork, and procedure. That's why you must build your own system in the meantime, one that restores what bureaucracy can't touch, your stability. Reclaiming peace means taking your power back from waiting. Don't wait to feel better until someone is arrested or a report is published. Start now, by grounding yourself in rituals that remind you of who you are beyond the chaos. It could be something as simple as journaling what you feel instead of letting it spiral in your mind, or setting boundaries with people who bring up the case only to gossip. Maybe it's reconnecting with a hobby that was buried under all the emotional weight. These small, deliberate actions become anchors. They keep you steady while the world around you wobbles. It's easy to obsess over updates, to check every rumor or new detail, as if closure hides behind the next headline. But that kind of waiting drains you. Your peace can't depend on external milestones. It has to be self-generated. There's a difference between staying informed and staying imprisoned by anticipation. Choose the first. Let the process do its work while you continue building a life that reflects healing, not suspense. The investigation may reveal truths you already knew, and it may take its time doing so. But your healing doesn't have to run on the same clock. Every day you commit to self-care, to reflection, to surrounding yourself with safe energy, you're moving faster than the investigation ever could. Because peace isn't a result, it's a discipline. So while the system crawls through evidence, let your spirit sprint toward recovery. Reclaim your mornings, your rest, your laughter, your quiet routines. Let the law handle punishment, you handle restoration. That's how you win twice, by staying sane in the middle of something designed to make you spiral, and by proving that your emotional life will never again be at the mercy of anyone's lies or timelines. Number 14. When they fall, don't let the downfall be your identity. Let it be one chapter that proves you are stronger than the plot they wrote for you. There's a temptation that comes when the tables finally turn, to make their downfall your victory parade. It's understandable. After all the lies, manipulation, and sleepless nights, seeing justice finally reach them feels like balance returning to the world. But the danger is letting that moment become your new identity. If you're not careful, you can end up orbiting the very story that once trapped you, defining your strength only through their collapse instead of your growth. What truly sets you apart is the ability to evolve beyond the narrative they tried to keep you in. Their consequences are important, yes. They represent accountability. But accountability is not your finish line. It's just a checkpoint. The real triumph is when your life starts to breathe again, when you reclaim the right to be happy without it being an act of rebellion. That's when your healing becomes visible, when you're no longer defined by what happened to you, but by what you built after it. The most radical act of recovery isn't revenge. It's redefinition. It's choosing joy without needing permission. It's building new relationships without fear of betrayal shadowing every moment. It's returning to your goals, passions, and creativity with no emotional residue from the past. When you start creating again, whether it's through work, art, or connection, you shift from being a survivor of a story to the author of a new one. And that's what unnerves your enemies the most. Not your anger, but your evolution. People who betray you expect your silence or your obsession. They don't expect your freedom. They don't expect you to laugh again, to thrive again, to love again without bitterness. So when you do, you become living evidence that their attempt to break you only made you more whole. Their downfall will make noise, but your restoration will make history. Let them face their consequences. That's between them and the truth. Your job now is to live so expansively that the betrayal becomes a mere paragraph in a much larger story, one where you came out stronger, clearer, and unapologetically alive. That's the kind of justice that outlasts any verdict, the kind that can't be taken away because it's written in who you've become. What we've explored here goes far beyond the surface of betrayal and exposure. This isn't just a story about an ex facing investigation or karma catching up. It's about the power you gain when truth, patience, and resilience intersect. You've seen how their lies, manipulations, and carefully constructed illusions are unraveling, and yet the real lesson isn't in watching them stumble. It's in understanding the depth of your own survival. Every moment of pain you endured, every time you were gaslit or doubted, has become proof of your endurance and your clarity. You didn't just survive, you became the evidence that truth outlasts deception. Their panic, their apology performances, and their crumbling alliances are not your victories to claim. They are simply the consequences of a life lived in dishonesty. Your victory comes from reclaiming your narrative, rebuilding your life, and redefining what justice and restoration mean for you. Every step you take to restore your peace, to set boundaries, to nurture relationships, and to expand your creativity is an act of power. While the world watches the fallout, your life becomes the ultimate testimony that the person they tried to break is now unrecognizably stronger, wiser, and untouchable by the narrative they once controlled. Remember, true strength is in living fully, unapologetically, and with integrity. The investigation and the exposure are just chapters in a much larger story, your story. Your story is not defined by betrayal, by lawsuits, or by public opinion. It is defined by your resilience, your growth, and your refusal to let anyone else write your truth. The most unignorable response is the one that cannot be manufactured, one that doesn't depend on someone else's downfall, but on your rise. Every choice you make to rebuild your life, every moment you reclaim your dignity, is a declaration that you are more than a victim. You are the architect of your own destiny. So, if this message resonates with you, and you feel the power of reclaiming your narrative and witnessing the truth come to light, make sure to join this journey with us. Subscribe to the channel to stay connected to more truths that empower and awaken. Hit the like button to show support for standing strong in the face of betrayal. Leave a comment sharing your story or insights because your voice matters, and share this video to remind others that survival and justice are deeply intertwined. The truth is unstoppable, and together we witness it, live it, and rise above it. God bless you.